Hey, deserving listeners, 90-Day Fiancé, Jorge and Anfisa. Let's watch.
Anfisa is in this relationship with George just for the money?
I said to Matt that definitely I can see some chemistry, yes, between them.
You see chemistry? Oh, wait, let's hear it. You can see chemistry between them. Really? Now tell me about that.
Hold his hand, how she give him hug, how she give him kiss, and it's sincerely.
Yeah, I've been saying that from the beginning. I get chills just having some validation because I feel like hardly anyone talks about this because the frame is like, well, she's just in it for the money and he's just in it for her looks. And no, I mean, it certainly looked that way, and I could see how people would think that. I mean, that's the way that's edited and particularly the way Anfisa talks. But my hypothesis has been that she's joking and or she's putting up a wall of defense to defend herself against vulnerability. There are hints, and some pretty overt hints, especially as the seasons went on, that she is infatuated with him. She loves him. She needs him, and him her. And it doesn't show itself very often, and it's eclipsed often by their extreme conflict and abuse. But I think she's desperate. Now, I don't think that she has the attachment security enough to actually see him for him. I think she sees him as someone who could be a secure attachment, and that's mostly what she sees. She's just hoping that he won't leave. She doesn't really necessarily care about compatibility of personality, that kind of thing. I don't know that, but and maybe they do have some absolutely legitimate compatible personality aspects, and I've been suspecting from the beginning that behind closed doors, that's when her vulnerability really comes out. And if George could, and he's hinted at this a little bit, but if George could tell the truth, you understand, when we turn off the cameras, she is the most loving, needy, compassionate person, not compassionate, but passionate. She wants to be with me. She wants to kiss me. She wants to she wants to sit next to me. She wants to know what I'm doing. And that's intoxicating because I've never had someone, especially this attractive, that I find to be attractive, that this focused on me. It's intense. And of course, the flip side of that coin is that, well, it's dependency and it's desperation, and results in when he goes to work, she doesn't have anything else to do in her life and it becomes dysregulated. But anyway, so she sees that. She sees that intensity, which is validating to me.
You can tell that that's sincere.
She likes money, but I'm not going to judge her. It's her. A lot of women likes money.
Yeah, and I'm just not afraid to say it.
Well, let me ask you, are you in this relationship with George strictly for his money?
Not strictly, but for the most part.
For the most part.
Okay, I'll take her word for it, I guess, but I think if she could really answer that, and who knows what she even really knows about herself. It could be that she lacks insight, but I don't know. But yeah, I think she's definitely focused on money, at least consciously, right? And wants fancy things. But she says, well, there are other things. Yeah, I mean, I've been, in the beginning of watching them, my hypothesis was that early in life, for whatever reason, and a lot of people go through this experience, she associated, if you spend money on me, then you love me. So a lot of people will go through early childhood experiences where they're not getting enough love and attention. A common scenario is a divorce and the dad will move away, maybe even to another state or something. And the father, and so the children they feel abandoned, they long for that attachment to return. And they go through a lot of grief, a lot of pain, a lot of anger, a lot of judgment of themselves. The kids will often blame themselves, if only I was a better kid. So a lot of real difficult feelings. And then the father will send gifts or will come to town for a bit and bring and buy a lot of things, because the father wants to connect with their children, but for various different reasons is not, and the father is guilty and feels ashamed and will say, well, at least with all this extra time that I have away from my kids, I'm working, and so I can actually buy things. And then this happens over and over again, and the children say, they sort of switch to, well, I'd rather have love and attachment from him, but at the very least, he's giving me objects which I can hold on to as an indication that he at least thinks of me, and maybe this means that he loves me. And so those things become one: material items, gifts, and love. Because she could earn her own money. I mean, if she really wants handbags, and I don't understand, I mean, it's just not my culture. Why do you need several handbags? Like, I mean, I understand, like, anyway. But she could get a job, and but that's not her orientation. Her orientation is towards a man, right? And maybe she will eventually, you know, it's the whole green card issue and working. But anyway, so I'm using that mild data point as a indication that possibly really what she wants is security and not money, but she associates those things because of early childhood experiences. That's just my guess.
So what?
I would say, I don't know.
George, you nodded your head when I asked Anfisa that question. You think she's in the relationship for the money?
Yeah, because when I have it, there's absolutely no problem, no arguments, no nothing. Like I'm the most perfect person.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. So that does point in that direction, that she is. Now, of course, there's another side to this, is that she could have, grown up. She could be currently in a state of poverty. I don't know. We almost never learn about these details, but for some people, the material items, or at least being around money, equals safety, equals security, not just relationship-wise, but also the ability to have food and pay your medical bills and have a roof over your head and be in a neighborhood where the police actually respond when you call them. So, there could be that too.
You're an idiot, you're this, you're that.
She just has to understand, there are times when he does have money, and then there's times when he doesn't, but she has to be there for him. What if you didn't have money, God forbid, what if you didn't have money one day?
If something were to happen to me, legal-wise, or something were to happen to me, I would get hurt.
So I don't know, but given my fairly elaborate, hypothesized, totally speculative conceptualization of their relationship and their personalities, it's possible. So that what we're hearing is that when he has money, everything's fine, and when he doesn't, then she starts to become abusive. It's possible that she, because she went through her own abuse, which I don't know, she has we will often internalize the abuser, and thus will abuse others when it's convenient or when it feels right. And there's other reasons, but I won't get into it. And then when he is not earning money, at least in the narrative and the meaning of the relationship, it's like, okay, well, now I get 1 week a month where I get to let out that side of me and establish that I'm superior to you by putting you down and chastising you because you're an easy target, because we both agree that I'm only in this relationship for the money and you don't have money, and you also have a thing about materialism, and so we both agree that you're bullyable and you're a terrible person, you're worthless. And so maybe there's that. Because if she's really in it for the money only, if he spends money on her for 3 weeks out of the month, logically you'd be like, well, he doesn't have money now, but he'll get paid soon. I can wait a week. I don't know. It's hard to know. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe she is extremely materialistic and oriented that way just because of materialism and has nothing to do with attachment issues. I don't know. Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Let's talk about being a problem solver. Whenever we have a problem in our lives, we go through different stages of change. In the pre-contemplative stage, we're not even ready to acknowledge the problem. When we finally manage to recognize the issue, we enter the contemplative stage. In this stage, we know we have a problem, but we're not ready to take action. We're contemplating what action to take and whether or not to take action at all. For some people, they can remain in the contemplative stage for years, never taking action to improve their life. I'm guessing that some of you are in this stage regarding going to therapy. You've acknowledged that you probably need therapy, but for whatever reason, you haven't taken action yet. Well, as I always say, we all need therapy from time to time, and we all deserve therapy. One way to easily get therapy is through BetterHelp. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and or even live chat sessions with your therapist. So, when you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Kirk.
And I couldn't provide, like, she would just leave.
There has to be more
If he
there.
goes bankrupt,
Yeah, no,
are you going to
exactly.
leave him, Anfisa?
Yes.
Yeah, she's been saying that for the beginning. She even kind of smirks when she says that. And I don't believe that because he, I think, kind of is bankrupt. He frequently doesn't have money to pay for things. It seems to be dwindling over time, and they've been together for a while, right? So I don't think it's true, because as soon as she learned, very quickly, as soon as she landed in the States, she learned of his real financial situation when she saw the apartment they were living in and all the other stuff. She could have turned around and left right then, but she didn't. They got married, in fact. So I'm pretty sure that when she says that, she's either lying as a joke, or she is lying to herself, or she's defending against the vulnerability. Because think about, given it the way Anfisa is, and my hypothesis about what's happening, for Sean to ask that question of, like, if he had no money, would you stay with him? If for her to say yes, that would be a massive vulnerable thing for her to say, even though for most couples it's tolerable vulnerability, right? But for her, I don't think so. She would have to say, well, if he didn't have any money, yes, I would stay with him because I love him and I want to be with him and I'm attached to him and I'm desperate for his approval. Like, that's way too much vulnerability than I think she can tolerate.
And that's the problem. The problem is that,
Because
like,
you showed, when we met, you were like, oh, I have this, I have that.
and I
you
had
promised
it.
me all this.
No, and I had it. Like,
If you want a girl to love you just for you, you should not come out like this. You should not break about your mind.
This is what a lot of people will say, and not a lot, but I think a small group of people will say that's why George deserves everything he's getting, is because, he bragged about money, so he's going to get the abuse, and that's just the way that it is. He dug himself into a hole, and, he made his bed, and he's got to live in it. And it's like, okay, you could absolutely criticize him if you're Anfisa and say, you lied to me. You bragged about money, and you didn't have it. And that bothers me, and it indicates something about you that I don't like. And okay, but that doesn't justify abusing him. It also doesn't justify saying that the only reason why I'm with you is because of the money. I don't actually love you. That's another reason why I think behind the scenes there's a lot of love and affection, particularly from her to him, because he's been told this over and over and over again on camera, that she's only in it for the money, over and over and over again. So I don't think he's that uninsightful that he would stay in a relationship and marry someone that was like that. I think pretty sure he, at the very least, would have put the brakes on the marriage. But I think he knows that, well, she's saying this now, which hurts, and maybe that's what's going on behind the scene, underneath everything. But when y'all aren't around, she is very oriented towards me, and I can bank on that as indication that maybe she does love me.
Have you thought about leaving her?
Yeah,
Why?
because of the situation.
Because it's all about money for her,
Yep.
mostly, and you
You
feel
thought
that
about
it's
leaving
not
me.
love.
Last night when I told you that I want to leave you, you were crying.
No, well,
And you were saying, oh, you want to leave me?
Yeah, I think they both think about leaving the other person, and now we're hearing that for him that was very hurtful and he was crying. I don't blame Anfisa for bringing that up, because I think they both have a lot of reasons to wonder if the relationship should last. But again, we're hearing behind the scenes. It's hard to imagine that, given the way that they present, that she would say, I want to leave you, and he's crying. It's hard to imagine that. But I think behind the scenes, I think a lot of things are happening behind the scenes.
actually said that's what she's waiting for, and I just, like, that's what I'm just like, I don't know if I really want to do this. Like, if I annul before the 2 years, you got to go back.
Are you thinking about annulling the marriage to Anfisa?
If things get to the point where they have, like, if they get,
You already had phones thrown, and what point are you looking for?
The tell-alls back in the day were so much better, I think, because Sean is, I think, allowed to really have an ongoing conversation where the questions build, right? There's a progression there. And instead of, often in the more recent tell-alls, they just kind of glance over things or they edit it in a certain way. And so, you know, George is saying, well, sometimes I think about annulling the marriage and ending things, and Sean's like, you do? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, well, why haven't you already? He's like, well, I don't know. I'm just sort of waiting to see because of the stuff. And she's like, well, what more do you need to see other than what you've already seen and heard just here today? And now we're going to get an answer. Let's see what he says. I think what the reality is that he would say, well, behind the scenes, she's very loving, and I think there's a chance for us. If we can just get rid of the conflict and that reactivity and just have those warm, passionate moments that I've seen in her. I've seen the look in her eyes that she loves me. If we can just get more of that, that's what I'm hoping for. But let's see what he says.
Just a boiling point, like the phone thing, that was a boiling point.
Okay.
You know, like, I don't even know where else this, like, where it can go or what the situation.
You're married.
So I don't think I've thought this before or said it, that I think he has a similar vulnerability sensitivity because, and again, I could just be reading into everything. Like, it could be exactly the way it's depicted, but it just would be so weird if it was. So if I was to go down to more speculation town, is that he was presented with a question from Sean that was like, well, why are you with her? I mean, in lieu of all these terrible things. I think in order for him to answer that rationally, the place he goes into his head is, well, it's because I love her so much, and there are times when I feel really genuinely loved by her. But that would require vulnerability, and so he just sticks to this surface zone. And that could be, if they were a couple that I was seeing, I would hypothesize, if I generated that hypothesis, one of the fastest ways, because working on the Anfisas in the room is actually, that can take a lot of time. There's a lot of landmines there. And I would guess, and actually Burry Bowen did this as well, is to work with the more differentiated person first. And so I would work with him on trying to get him to admit to himself, and especially in front of Anfisa, his vulnerability and his longing. Because, I've been talking about triggers for Anfisa about abandonment. Well, there's the reverse, which is indications of safety, which is, I'm guessing right now, if he turned to her and says, look, honey, I get that you're into the money and stuff, but I'll tell you what I'm into it right now is because I love you. And yeah, I'm attracted to you, but I just love you. I love being with you. And I have seen moments where you are in love with me, or what feels like you're in love with me. And that's why I'm in this relationship, that's why I'm hoping that we can get rid of the conflict, because when we have those moments, that means a lot to me. I'm guessing that would be the answer. I don't know. But instead, he has some very surface, almost nonsensical answer to the question that Sean was asking. And I'm guessing that because he has that resistance to the vulnerability, that triggers Anfisa, and also doesn't give her a light in the storm, port in the storm. Anyway, because for her, if she had that, she could relax and maybe stop being triggered herself and thus abusive to him.
Anfisa, are you concerned that George will annul this marriage?
No, I'm not concerned.
Why not?
Because he won't.
I believe she believes that. And I almost believe her. I don't think there's anything she could do that would make you annul the marriage.
Yep, there is actually.
What could she do?
Cheat, but I'm not going to cheat.
Yeah, really interesting conversation. Really, Sean is really getting to the crux of the matter and stating, I think, some very astute statements. But I think that they both are hoping, regardless of how bad it is, that it will get better. I think they both hope that. So I don't think annulment or divorce I don't think it's at the top of the list of possibilities. I think they're still definitely holding out for things working out.
I'm passed out.
Stop being lazy and go to do some workout, honey.
I don't exercise, okay? This is not a thing for me.
I just had to include this clip. It's just so iconic. It's been so long since I saw this stuff, and it's interesting to see it again. Anyway, there's also a lot of sadness and pain in this relationship, but I guess there were some funny moments. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.